Welcome to another Wisdom and Knowledge. I'm Mark over here in Wilmington, North Carolina, and we got a great guest for you. You might remember him from the Final Destination. He is now into farming, growing his own food, and we are just so thrilled. And not to mention, he's full of wisdom and knowledge, which we'll touch upon how he learned, you name it. Please welcome Bobby Campo. Bobby, welcome to the podcast. Do you go by Bobby or Robert
I go
nowadays?
by Robert. I go by
Okay,
Robert.
there we go.
Before,
Robert, there we go.
but my first given name is Bobby. My given name is Robert. What's up, man? How are you?
I am doing great. Now let's
Good, dude.
start out by talking about how you transitioned from this actor to, what made you wanna get into farming to begin with, and how did you find out about it?
Well, I moved. Well, my wife and I moved to Georgia in 2018, and so in 2019 we ended up living on this. It was a 1,900 acre property, and we made friends with the people that owned the place. And when spring rolled around, they were like, "Hey, you want to help us with this garden?" Where they had like a small plot. And so that's how I got into it. We just started planting seeds, and didn't really have like I watered it and weeded it and did that kind of thing. Didn't really have like much of a knowledge base on what we were doing. And I started researching compost. And I had this idea in my head. I was watching this guy. His name's David Johnson, and he's a marine. He's a microbiologist that teaches at Chico State and at University of New Mexico. And he has he wears like the ugliest shoes you've ever seen. He wears these white Velcro shoes in all of these presentations. And I think it's so funny because he's wearing these white Velcro shoes while he is turning compost piles. And you're like, that's a bad combination, buddy. You're like, that's not going to work out well for you long term. And so his wife, she gets tired of cleaning his clothes after he's turning all these compost piles, and she develops this. It's called a bioreactor, and essentially it's a design where you fill up leaves inside of this structure, inside of this container, and you have PVC pipes put in it, and so as you fill it up, you get everything wet. You pull out the pipes, and then you have this like air flowing tunnel that helps the leaves to break down, and you develop all these different microorganisms that you can make into like inoculants for soil and seed baths and all this stuff. And so I saw that video and I like made one instantly, and I was like, I want to be a compost king. It's just a funny king. It's a funny thing to be the king of. But I felt like instantly, I was like, that's the future. Like that's like you have to go backwards to go forwards. Like I heard Terrence McKenna say once, where it's like you go back to the first place where you knew things made sense, and that's where you go back to and start from that point. And I was like, okay, well, we're an agrarian people. We understand things like even our religious myths are all based in agrarian like stuff. Like we understand that. So I was like, let's go back into that part of our roots. And in the process of that, I started to realize um, how fragile and kind of gross our food system is, and like what it actually it's like profiting, and like where a lot of the fertilizers are coming from, and like what they're made from, and then you learn about the pesticides, and you learn about like some of the insane stuff that chemists have been doing for the last 100 years. So
Exactly.
how all this stuff is kind of like and by the way, like I haven't quit acting or anything like that. I've kind of just taken a big detour from it, and gone and like learned a bunch of stuff along the way. So now, fast forward, I guess that's what 4 years later, I have been uh, managing, running this 300-acre property, and I'd say about 50 of it's probably 50 of it's actually like farmable land, and we have some ruminants, and we have some chickens. We had pigs and goats and a bunch of different stuff, which we've gotten rid of subsequently because a lot of that stuff is sort of too hard to manage. And I don't really like pig meat that much. It wasn't really it was kind of more of a labor and a real learning lesson. But yeah, so now I'm kind of getting more into like learning what's actually something that I'm interested in, what's actually healthy for me, so narrowing the field down to something that's more tailored to what I'm interested in. But yeah, that's like the short of it. That's how I kind of got into farming. That's
And
what I do.
Yeah, and you are a world of knowledge. Now, let's talk about, where you are getting your information from, what books you are reading, what, documentaries, you name it.
There's the book I'm reading right now. So the farming the thing that I got into is based off of Rudolph Steiner's suggestion, which has become known as biodynamic farming. And biodynamics is essentially a way of preparing, like all the idea is that everything that you're going to put on your farm is coming from inside your farm. But so it's sort of based in like a peasant wisdom, something that was like an old pre-industrial age, that where like whole communities would like, that's what they did. They would just like run a farm for a count. And you're like, okay, well, how do we keep this thing fertile? And then you'd have priests that would be like being like, you put, this land fallow and this one in clover and this one needs to have the barley put into it. Like they were constantly managing. And some of these like text would go back hundreds of years, like what happened to that crop or what happened to that field or that plot. And so Steiner saw that, I talked about this last time with you, but like Steiner was aware that so Leibniz came up with this idea that plants only need NPK fertilizers that are soluble to be able to thrive. And the industry ran with that, and it was kind of like right at the same time that there was a German scientist that figured out how to synthesize nitrogen. They started selling nitrogen to both sides of World War to allowed World War One to go on for like way longer than it should have, because all of the potassium nitrate supplies in the world were like consolidated to like one small island, and the English Navy had that island locked up. So nobody was going to get that. So no gunpowder. So when somebody figured out how to synthesize it, it was the birth of the first international corporation, and it allowed World War One to go on, which was insane, right? Like it was like a bad time for humanity.
Oh yeah.
Um, so after World War II, they realized that plants would explode when you fed them that. Didn't mean it was good, but it's like, like steroids makes things explode, right? Like it's not a long-term strategy for health. And so all of the farmers that were putting out compost and all of the labor requirements were quickly removed over a relatively short period of time with industrialization, both with tractors and which, basically tanks converted, and with the chemical, ag chemical stuff that was going on to it. So Steiner saw stuff happening, and he was like, look, I don't want to, I don't want to tell you guys are wrong, but you're wrong. And there's going to be like massive consequences that come about from that, both for the economy, for the human race as like a whole, for the spirit of both the land and the animals that are like anything that's in this like death cycle, like there's consequences that are coming. So here's how here's a different option, here's a different path. And so he introduced, or kind of reintroduced, what was known as a Goethean school of thought. I don't know if you're familiar with Goethe. Goethe was a poet and a botanist, but really he was like a natural philosopher that was like the guy of his day. And so Goethe had like he had a rival color theory with Newton. Like he was like a heavy hitter in his time, but he's one of these dudes that's kind of been like lost and forgot, like a forgotten genius. And he's known for writing Faust now, basically. So Steiner is heavily influenced by Goethe, and I'm reading this book right now. It's called Man and Matter, and it's kind of going through like this Goethean school of thought. And a big part of it, and it's something that like I haven't really understand the value of it until like kind of peeling back, because it kind of seems a little like something that you can chuck, or like, it's like a little, oh, that's quaint. But it's this idea of epistemology, and epistemology is the study of like, how do we know what we know? So like it's really like, how do you know your concepts about things are actually explaining like what it is you're looking at, what it is you're observing? Because concepts tend to get in the way of observing things. You're like, look at that tree right there. We're like, oh, the electrons and the photons and you have all these like abstractions that get in the way of the physical three-dimensional, multi-dimensional tree. And so Steiner was taking a lot of the influence that was coming from this Goethean underground, essentially it was an underground philosophical movement in a lot of ways, mixed with his Rosicrucian um, I don't know, power that he had developed to become clairvoyant. And he gave a set of instructions, or like kind of like suggestions really, that like can help improve the fertility on the land. And so yeah, so this is the stuff that I've been studying, kind of to influence the farming side of what I'm doing. But like what's cool about Steiner is like guy wrote like 300 and something books, like 400 books, something like that. And the subject variation, I mean, it goes from like your own personal development to your like medical stuff to education to economy to agriculture. I mean, like the guy has given such like a huge wealth of knowledge to the world. And he developed something called anthroposophy. And the anthroposophists today, I mean, like, I don't know, they're really insular. They're kind of like, they're really like standoffish towards people because they act like this information, if it gets out in the wrong hands, is going to be, detrimental. Somehow it's going to be used against the human. I don't know, maybe, but like, um, so I think that's why he's kind of stayed in the background, as everybody was kind of afraid they didn't really know what to do with it, the people that were in it. Um, and I don't know that much about it, but I know what I know about it. And I think that the concept thing is really what's kind of opened my eyes to like taking the modernity glasses off of thinking I know everything, and looking at or I thinking that we have it all like kind of sorted out, like where we're at, and being like, wait a minute, I don't really know what this phenomena is. I know what I've read a story about, or like, and it really starts young, like Apple, and like, because I have my year old now, and it's, we have all these little like flashcards that are toys, and it's like,
Oh
hey, it's
yeah.
for Apple, and then you don't really think about what an apple is, you don't like think about these things after that. It's kind of just gets, I don't know, it's like a silly example, but like a lot of these things just kind of get put into the base level of consciousness, and then you don't really ever revisit them again, because every time you interact with it, you're like, oh, it's just recall, it's cut, oh, it's just this, oh, it's this thing I've always, I don't need to explore that mystery any further. And there's like this massive mystery to like be unraveled in like what a seed is,
Yeah.
like how that actually turns into a forest, like that's kind of like a bizarre mystery. Um, but it's so I that's like where I've kind of been focused in a lot of ways, and a lot of the people that I've read have kind of been people that also have been influenced by Steiner over the last year. So I'm reading this book, like I said, Man versus Matter, and he brings up this. He talks about these two forces that are working polarity to each other. And so he talks about polarities as primary, and then there's secondary polarities that will come from the primary, ones. And the primary polarity that we have in this material realm, that is the gravity force, the force of gravity, things that hold you down, in place. It like attracts matter to, spirit, whatever we are, we're encapsulated in this magic, or in this gravitational matter thing. And then there's a counter polarity force to it, which is the force of levity. And I think about, there's a Stephen Fry quote that he said. He said this in a lecture he was giving. He said the reason why angels can take themselves lightly, angels have wings because they take themselves lightly, and there's this sense of like levity to them. There's these people that like uplift you when you're around them, and there's something that they have that's just not, it's gratitude, it's love, whatever, however you want to like label it, but there's this lightness that kind of differentiate. It doesn't have any kind of individualization. It kind of all moves like a gas would expanding in a chamber. Like there is no center to it, and there's something uplifting about that. And this dude is putting forward this like concept that this is one of these like it's an unrecognized or unacknowledged part of our world. And it's like after we die, we actually get pulled back up into the ancestral realm where we all like live in this way, and then we just choose to come down in gravity, with individualization, into this realm for whatever purpose we came into it. And that, I don't know, there's some really cool stuff, like, because that's how the plant's being plucked up out of the ground to grow in its like fashion up out of the earth from this seed. It's like there's a levity force that's pulling it. Um, so that's what I've been into. That's what I've been into this
Incredible.
past week.
No, this is fascinating. You know, when so many people are distracted and don't want to read a book or don't want to, learn, you're out there, doing what you enjoy doing and gaining so much knowledge.
I try. I'm trying to. I'm really fascinated by it, and I think we have a short amount of time to really share a lot of information. I don't know. Internet might get turned off any day, so like, it's you sift through a lot of stuff. Like who knows what's really real, and I think that's kind of interesting now. And you're like, I don't. I like ideas. I don't know what's real, but I want to really like go with what resonates within me
Mhm.
and explore that. So for instance, like my wife and I made like this terrible investment this past year. I thought I was going to be moving up into Virginia to go work at this research farm. I got an offer from the guy who was the farm manager, and it didn't quite work out. There was some issues with other things that didn't like line up. But in the process, we bought a schoolie. So I have this like converted school bus that it's decked out. It's super sweet, uh, but there's a lot of wiring issues in it that are really expensive.
Oh,
so we didn't quite know that. We got the people that sold it to us. Like I kind of think they gave us a hot potato, but like
mhm.
what do you do? It's like you make bad investments in life. Like that's part of it. And so we bought the bus. We ended up driving out to Idaho. So we pick it up in Missouri, and we're driving out, and we're like 3 days across into Wyoming, and it just dies, like it's dead.
Oh,
And we're like, oh, what? We had to stay for 3 days. And so it was a mess. We were like, we got upset at each other, and like, it was like super stressful. And so it was me and the little one and my wife, and we were having a great time too. But then, we ended up get a rental car because we were going to go out to Idaho, and she
mhm.
had this meeting, and there's this dude out there that's like her mentor, and he is one of the literal Wall Street giants. Like he's one of the like he's like one of the crushers of that world. And he was like, oh yeah, you made a bad investment. Yeah, he's like, the worst investments I ever made were like is what put me where I'm at. And his reaction to it was so like, whoa, I'm being crazy. You know what I mean? I'm like lamenting like life is over this like fucking school bus that didn't work out. Okay, like it was a
Exactly.
silly, that's what we learned a shit ton. And so I'm sitting at this dinner, and there's this other dude next to on the table next to him, and he starts telling me, he's like, yeah, this guy, he's bought this dream land. He's got these cows, and he's running like 500 head across this 100-acre plot in the Stanley Idaho mountains, and cows taste like ammonia. There's something wrong with the meat. There's something wrong with the ground that the grass are eating is like making them taste like ammonia, and like it's not, the nitrification process isn't working properly. And I go sit down and start talking to him, and we start like trading, like ideas of shit
Mhm.
that I read or heard or like talked about with some of the biodynamic people. And he was like, dude, will you come out and look at the land? And so he takes us out there, and we're walking around and we're looking at it. And here's another guy. He's like $8 million investment. This land is like the craziest, most pristine place you've ever been. And he was like, oh yeah, we'll figure it out. It was, he just had this casualness about it. Like it was like, this is just the obstacle to deal with, you know? Um, and so I'm looking at this bus, and I'm like, okay, it's not the worst thing in the world. It's something it's not in the way, it's on the way, as one of my old teachers used to say. So we end up getting it towed down to Colorado, just sucky tow bill. We did it.
About
And
that.
so we take it to the shop, and then it goes to another shop, and then they think they got the problem solved. So we and this takes 2 months. So we fly back out, we pick the bus up, we drive it down, we go over this nasty pass coming down in southern Colorado, Colorado. The check engine light comes on. We get to Denver, or we get to Dallas at this point. We like limp to Dallas. Um, and which is a long drive. So we're going like 45, and like there was issues. And then it would end up being like an injector harness issue. It was there for 5 days, but which was fine. We went to Houston, and it's all family and some stuff. And then um, we had the weirdest cross country road trip ever. And so we finally get the bus back. And as we're pulling in, all these check trans lights, and like it started slipping into
Oh,
neutral, started doing like, but like I'm parking it and I just was like, you know what, like fuck the bus. I'm leaving it alone. It's sitting in a field right now. And it's gonna like so so I'm saying all of this because like you're talking about like taking time to do certain things. So I got this buddy that works at the feed store that I get see that feed from sometimes, and he's really big into hunting. This dude Reggie, and his name is Reggie One Shot. That's his like when he texts you like the little like signature. It says Reggie One Shot. I love it. He's great. And
Hmm.
so Reggie and I didn't really know Reggie before this, but we spent like the month of January and like some of December sitting in this bus. It's a schoolie. It's a cool schoolie. It's like a living room, hunting out of it. so
Yeah.
I'd be sitting on a couch like looking at this window and I'm reading this book, like waiting for deer to show up.
Hmm.
And he's laying across like a queen size mattress in the back, just like I see deer. So I was like, I don't think anybody's ever done this before. I don't know. Like I feel like we might be the first person to ever do this. Like hunting out of a schoolie.
Yeah, no, I've
Like
never
in
heard
the
of that
living room
before. Yeah.
while I'm reading books and he's like scanning for deer. Um, and I thought, wow, it was a shitty investment, but it's not like the worst thing in the world. We have like this cool experience coming from it, and we're gonna. So that's what our plans for next year once it warms up, or this year once it warms up, is to move down onto this other field that is like right next to this stream that's got like kind of a babbling brook sort of sound, and it's got this cool kind of enchanted forest feel. It's sitting on top of these massive crystal deposits that are coming like out of this hill that's like right behind the bus. So there's these huge crystals just coming up out of the ground. There's like quartz all over the place. And yeah, so I mean, bad investment, maybe, maybe not. We'll see.
Yeah. To be
Yeah,
determined. Yeah.
TBD. Yeah, TBD. But yeah, so that's something I've been really into. And then I like just being open to a lot of stuff that's on my feed. Like that's what's cool about the algorithm. It does kind of narrow down. It's the blessing and the curse of it. It narrows down what they think you're going to bite on. Um, but like I was telling you beforehand, like I really like how Jason Bashir's thinks. I don't think he's necessarily right, but like who agrees with everybody on anything? Like nobody. But that Archaics podcast, I think he's got some really cool concepts. He's really big on the simulation thing and simulation theory, and I've thought about this now for about 3 years, and I was really kind of hesitant to believe in it. And I know it's a really old idea. Like I know this is kind of a repackaged old, Rene Descartes talked about like mind in a vat idea, um, and I think a lot about that now, and I'm starting to really understand what the implications of that are. Um, he said something because like there's like is it the Earth flat or is it spinning? Are we in a vast cosmos or is this just like the point that all kind of gravity well funnels down to, and we're in this small sort of deal? Like that's what a lot of people are talking about because that's the thing. Like the systems have failed. The institutions have failed. We can't trust you guys now. We know that,
No,
right?
not at
Now we have
all.
to figure out what is really happening
Hmm.
for ourselves, and you're going to stumble along the way. You know what I mean? You're going to make mistakes. So okay, you might believe a dumb idea for a while, but like, there's dumb ideas everywhere. There's dumb ideas in the mainstream. There's dumb ideas that like don't work everywhere, right? So like, what's it matter if you think something wrong passionately for a short amount of time? Like, doesn't matter. You're trying to figure something out. Um, he made this point where it's like, doesn't matter if it's spinning or flat, it's a simulation. And I really like that rhetoric. I think it was really strong rhetoric. Um, because what's it matter if there's like a secret base in Antarctica and more land? Like if you can get to it, you can't get to it. Like that doesn't matter. What does matter is your internal state. What matters is your own internal vibration, for lack of a better term. And if you are sitting there resonating day after day, World War III is coming and all this other stuff. Like if you resonate that will be your reality. There's no way to um, there's no way to separate it. Like
No,
it's
you know it. Yeah.
fear will come upon you. That's like I think it's a Job 3 or something. Um, and it's so I think he's interesting. I'd like to talk to him about some stuff. Uh, Mainly because he talks a lot about the pyramids, and I've been in the pyramids, and I've had really weird experiences in the pyramids, in Giza, it's so I would like to talk to him about that because like it felt the way that he described stuff. I had experiences that were similar to that, so I think that would be kind of cool. Who else do I like? I like the Suspicious Observer guys. They talk a lot about like space weather stuff. And there's this guy Stefan Burns. He talks about a lot about uh, the Schumann resonance. And if you heard about this idea, the Schumann resonance, where like there's frequency bands that we connect to that are measured in Hertzian waves, but like they are the
Oh yeah, I have. Yeah.
yeah, they're like the consciousness that your brain is tuning to. So if you're in an alpha wave state or a beta wave state or a gamma wave state, like there's different agitation or calmness or creativity that can manifest within you based off of these ranges that they demarcate in these different wavelengths. And so they think there's some sort of relationship between the bands that are coming up or as a result of where we live or what we live in, and that's being driven by the sun. So I think that's kind of like a cool idea. Um, and they just talk about it, but those are like really old ideas. Um, but yeah, that's kind of like a briefer overview of stuff that I've listened to, but that's just what's coming to mind anyway. I also really like listening to like there's these little comic book shorts. This is totally not wise or knowledge based or whatever, but like
Okay.
like you're like I watched this one today. It was like, did you know that Wolverine's got 3 powers you didn't probably know about? It's like, okay, what are
That's
they?
great. Yeah.
He can use claws. Okay. Uh, yeah.
Yeah. So if somebody was going to start out, reading about one of Steiner's books or about Steiner, which one would you recommend if you're like a
Man.
beginner?
Yeah, that's like a tough one, right? Like when you start reading, because I would pick it up periodically and years ago. And I started picking up stuff and I'm like, you sort of throw it away right away. You're like, I have no idea. The language
Right.
is so like, well, I don't know what this means, and this doesn't mean anything. So like I'm
Mhm.
not gonna you're like, I need a primer to get into it. There is a there's a YouTube channel, this guy, it's Rudolph Steiner Press, Audio Press. Rudolph Steiner Audio Press. The guy put this dude Dale, my God, bless this guy, Dale Brunswick, I think his name is, or something like that. That might not be his name. It's Dale something. He like has read them as audiobooks, and they're
Mhm.
free on YouTube. So you can kind of scan through his titles, and he'll have short little like snippet ones that will be like single standalone like chapters from bigger works,
Mhm.
or you can like decide to take on a 20 volume set on what he thinks about reincarnation, which might be 40 hours of listening. I mean, like it's like there's some heavy, heavy, heavy amount of time that this guy is. I can't, these German dudes. This is what I think is so fascinating. There's a channel that like really made something click for me. Um, and it's called Seeing the Pattern, and it's this guy that's gone through and gone through all these different scientific theories of what the electron was or what the ether was. And this was back in like the 1800s into the early 1900s when this stuff was being argued out and people were putting forward their conceptions, and they would either be shot down or pushed up based off of whatever click or whatever made sense, right? um, and so he talks about quantum electrodynamics, as being the the way he describes it is the bomb goes off. That works allegedly. And I say allegedly because if you ever watched Galen Windsor talk about it, if you ever that guy Galen Windsor,
I think I've seen some of his videos.
like that older dude, he's got the glasses and he like worked in
Oh yeah, okay.
he used to go swimming in the cooling ponds for the nuclear reactors. He was like, I would go swimming in them all the time. And then there was there was a politician that said, let me stop doing, like, make this more difficult to make cheap power, essentially was the end result. And so he could go around on stage and like eat plutonium or whatever and put a Geiger counter over his stomach. And either he was a stupid con, which is possible, or this guy was saying that there was a bit of a fugazi to the like end of all life for 10,000 years, because like that's what the bomb does. It says no more life will happen in whatever place that we decide to, like, it's the ultimate stick. So these dudes go, and Richard Feynman and a series of other guys, they like, it's like they go to this island afterward, and they're like, we're going to iron out quantum electrodynamics, and nobody can put forward a proper theory that everybody can agree on. And like Paul Dirac is like freaking out, like everybody's like, this is bullshit, like they're getting into these massive fights. But Feynman is like the ultimate salesman. I mean, like he's like, he's the guy. He's like Mr. Like, he's like, he kind of reminds me of Gilroy Lockhart from the second Harry Potter,
Oh,
winner of the, Witch's World Most Charming Smile Award or whatever, like he's got that kind of vibe about him. He's charismatic, and but he drew squiggly lines and got a Nobel Prize for it. Like these diagrams are it's kind of a dumb thing when you like think about it. And so he pulls this other English guy named Freeman Dyson up, and Dyson gives this mathematical basis. And this is on the second island trip. Like there was like a whole, like it wasn't resolved the first time to do a second one. And Dyson was like, look, we like piecemealed this thing together. And he goes, it shouldn't work. It doesn't work. I don't like it. He said jerry rigged was his exact words in the quote about it. And he goes, I never thought that this theory would last 10 years. So this is Dyson's quote. This is the mathematician that made this thing work. Now they are still running calculations on this stuff. Like 3 years ago, they were still publishing calculations on it. And all of the results have been different. And there's big changes, big factorial differences. They're not lining up. It's not consistent. So science is based off the fact that you and I could go and run the thing, and we're supposed to, it's independent verification, right? The source code it can only be done by a computer. The source code and the program that computer is run on is top secret. You can't do anything about it. You can't touch it. So there's all this shrouded in top secret stuff. But this is the crowning jewel of physics, right? This is the thing that makes physics and quantum mechanics and all that stuff reign supreme. It's based off a bunch of stuff that nobody can verify outside of the clearance, and only computers can do it. And it's never the same number when they run it through. And there's all these changes that need to be consistently made and errors corrected for. And there's something called I think it's nominalization or something like that, where like numbers that run off to infinity need to be like corrected. And you're like, what? So this is how the world works? And when you're watching this video, it explains it really well. It shows you a lot of the equations and like he does a really good job with it. And you start to realize that like, oh shit, all these people that I was reading that come from before 1910 or before all this stuff was like ironed out with the photoelectric effect paper in 1905 by Einstein. Everything before that was, you had French scientists, you had German scientists, you had Russian scientists, you had Jewish scientists, you had English scientists, you had Bulgarian, you had all these different people, Serbian guys, right? You had all these different, and it was national and racial thought. These are the French guys were doing weird stuff with pendulums and energetics, and they called radiesthesia. You had all these different things that were segregated by these lines. And afterwards, you have one science. And the bomb was the thing that made all of that stuff go away. You got Italian guys like Luigi Angina, the guy that, most people have never heard of. And, he's a weirdo. He's just this crazy crackpot dude making it rain in the 80s and 90s in Italy, because he was making it rain with weird machines that he had in his basement. And he didn't like that there was a racetrack next door. There was these Italian motorbike, like race car guys.
oh
And
yeah.
he's putting switches on and causing it to rain and rain out their day. And they were like, these people were all pissed off in his interview. Like, yeah, you make it rain every Sunday, because they didn't like the noise. So that was an Italian science that got chucked out the window. The Goethean stuff got chucked out the window. All this stuff went away, and we went purely hard into this materialistic world because of this one event that reigned supreme. That's not really ever been ironed out or explained. And it's like a great political fear tactic. I don't know if it's true or not. I don't really want to find out what it feels like to get a bomb dropped on my head that's a nuclear one, but I probably wouldn't be around to deal with it afterwards if it is so bad.
No, not at all.
You know what I mean? But I think it's really interesting because like all of this stuff that's pre that just goes away, and all this other like thought, there's now no question.
Mhm.
There's nobody worried about it, except for this stuff's all like bubbling up everywhere across the internet. And yeah, look, some of the stuff's gonna not work. But a lot of the stuff that was supposed to work doesn't work either. So it's like, you have to figure out it on our own in some regards. And like whatever you're passionate about, like let it drive you, or whatever you're inspired by, let that drive you, um, to explore something, and maybe we'll create something that would actually, help everybody else in a way that is, more beneficial for the species as a whole. Because I just think we're one species at the end of the day. I don't think that we're like, I think we're individual versions of one soul. I think we're kind of splinters off of one soul. And I like that idea a lot. I think that it kind of adds a lot of humility and also a lot of like freedom to like what it is we're here to do. But in a lot of ways, I think we are the planet's white blood cells in a way that we're here to like heal stuff that needs to be healed. And that's sort of the mode that we're in. Um, and in that process, I think it is going to be kind of crazy just because whatever we're working against or towards, there seems to be a group that's like not on the same page. And they're kind of the carnival runners, they're putting on the carnival. And, the carnival doesn't work if you're not paying attention to what's going on in the carnival. You got to put the illusion on there. Entertainment means to entrain the mind, like it is a entrapment or a prison that you're putting on top of the mind. And so the more that media and all that stuff can pull you out of or into a weird astral space or a weird mental space or emotional
Mhm.
space, the more that you're not working on your own internal self. So yeah, I mean that's the illusion that you work against. Like that is part of the interesting wisdom of the universe that we're here. This kind of odd carnival ride that is a play, and yeah, it's fascinating time. That was really interesting.
No, it really is. Do you see things getting better more than worse, especially here in the US? Do you see more people, being more self-sufficient, more caring about humanity, or do you see the latter?
I think that the people that are going to get the platform are the ones that uh, keep the carnival going.
Of
Um,
course.
but I think that the vast majority of people are either angry,
Hmm.
which is a beautiful first step. It's a gateway to action. I think that there are a tremendous amount of people going back to uh, a simpler deal, like getting out of the dead entity, because corpus oration, right? Corporation is the voice of the dead. So if you're working in that world, you're giving a voice to a dead entity. So it's like a zombie that you're feeding. And I think more and more people are pulling out of that. Um, we have to figure shit out, right? Like there's, like the idea of value and money and like how do we trade and like what do we agree on and all that stuff. I mean, like that's those are real issues to sort out. But I think that there's a great video that I saw. It was this guy talking about the Looking Glass project, and he's like a supposed whistleblower or whatever. But he kept talking about how like there was this program that was created to predict the future, predict the future, and there was a certain point in time where it like they couldn't get past it without everybody just like waking up, and like that was where humanity is heading. Like we are waking up to a reality of something that is you know it's like all truths will be revealed, all lies will be like revealed, that kind of thing. And I like that idea. Who knows if it's true? I like that idea. Um, but like there's I think that within our lifetime we're headed towards a place that like, you know, cataclysms, whether it's man-made,
Hmm.
whether it's artificial, whether it's cosmic, I don't know, the board is going to get kicked one way or another. Um, and there's all this stuff where like, half of Europe just like was like prepare for a war or whatever, like that all happened last week. Um, and you're like, I don't know. I mean, I'm always a little shocked when you're like see people still like I'm going in,
Hmm.
um, and because I know a lot of I know a lot of I mean, the stuff from the last 20 years is if how you could ever buy into the identity of that kind of thing is kind of beyond me still. And that's not to say that I wasn't like you know super into it at the time, um, but you start to question the idea of like the identities that we grow up on, like standing and raising, put your hand over your heart and all this, like the idea of a nationality, the idea that like, God favors me over some other person, that kind of that all that sort of
Hmm.
stuff is weird. Um and and I don't know, I just don't think it's fruitful to think that way.
No, I'm
Um
with you. Yeah.
you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, because the national thing, I think a lot about this verse in Isaiah. I think it's 9:6. It talks about how the government shall be shall be set up on your
Hmm.
shoulder. And it's you can interpret it as if it's like a prophecy for like something coming that's not you, or you can see it as it's your own head.
Hmm.
And the Israelites got into serious trouble when they decided to like, we need a king like everybody else. We need a good looking, strong, tall king. Let's get Saul in there. And Saul's like hiding in the basket and like trying to make himself small. And he didn't want and so they were like, no, that guy, that's our guy. Um, and you're like, so how is that not like a really great mythical fractal story? We need a king. Let's put somebody else up as a leader. And this guy's like, oh. And so you're like, let's get Lindsey Graham in there, or whatever. You're like, let's get one of these, schmucks in there.
Hmm.
Um, and with just like NLP and like how well that people can trigger in like pace and lead and like influence with tone and voice and like projecting certainty. It is a masterful art. It is a paint by numbers art at this point. I mean, like, and so many people can still fall for it. Um, and that's that's the stuff where you're like, wake up to that, get to know it, understand it. It's like NLP is a that's being used on you nonstop. And that,
Hmm.
if you don't know what it means, neuro linguistic programming,
Exactly. Yeah.
really accessible to get into understanding it. The people that invented it were insane, and like murder and rape charges out the wazoo. Tony Robbins is really great at it. Donald Trump's really great at it. Reagan was the best president to really do it, because it starts with a guy named Milton Erickson, where he was a hypnotherapist and he could do all kinds of really powerful stuff to his students. And there was a guy named John Grinder and another dude, Richard Bandler, and they studied all of this guy's work and material and came up with an influential uh, like handbook on how to turn princes into frogs and whatever. And a lot of people have done really dark stuff with that. Like there's and it's everything from your insurance salesman's probably taking a course on it. Like if you go into anybody, they're probably taking a course on try to how to sell you on it.
Hmm.
So like I don't know, it works as well as if you're unaware about it, that's when it works. But the second that you're aware of it and you hear like somebody doing right now, like all these little like clicks and
Hmm.
I did not do, all that stuff is NLP. So like once you see that, you're like, oh, that's a really ancient trick that is meant to keep me focused on the carnival. Um, and that's all it is carnival. It's not real. It's just this is
No,
a
not at all. Yeah. And I'm
but
glad
we don't
that,
need to be
there's
invested in all that stuff, you
no,
know.
and that's the thing about like you and I and a lot of the other people who think like us, we're not sucked into that and we wish for all of humanity to, get out of it.
There's the this is from that Robert Gilbert. That guy so dope. The Vesca Institute. He is an incredible speaker. He's so precise about what he says. That he's so calm. He's not a passionate person. He's very direct is too harsh of a word for him. He's so gentle how he speaks to people. And he's kind of become, he did some Gaia TV thing on sacred geometry, which I haven't seen, but like he's kind of, his name's kind of expanding from when I first heard from him talk. He's getting his name out there. But he talks about in one of these lectures that I found on YouTube I was listening to the other day. He says there's something called the old Grail question, and it's these idea that the Rosicrucian, which was like a brotherhood of people that were attempting to elevate humanity to a state of well, recognizing their origin, who they really are, and when you saw somebody interacting in front of you that was doing something that you didn't like, you would ask them, brother or sister, what ails you. You would look to them not as a like motherfucker, stop doing that to me. Like you would be like, no, you have a problem. Like, what's the deal? And not
Mm-hmm.
even not that even in itself just I felt too confrontational. Like there was more something of like a service about it because they thought I'm not going to stop reincarnating in this life until everybody's elevated to the part where we don't need to do this realm anymore. We can move on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's a Steiner idea as well. Like he said this thing, he talks about these like realms that we've been through, or eons that were epochs that we've been through, and so we're on the fifth post-Atlantean epoch right now. So these epochs kind of move in waves, and so there's a descent and an ascent that'll happen, and so we kind of gone through this descent into the material, and then we're going to move back up the spirit. And he said in the previous epoch, there's always a thing that wipes the board, and you kind of start over. And there's certain patterns of behavior in being that will make its way into the next round. And so there was only 12 or something like that were worthy to get through. These are all fictions. We're acting out
Mm-hmm.
fictions. We're like, like your cell phone, you smack your cell phone, you get a new one, new body for the same signal. So it's like the kind of the easiest way to describe it. The signal is there always. The antenna is the body. Body is just a house of like water and structure that houses the spiritual antenna. The antennas, the signal is going to be immortal. The body is interchangeable. Um, so the 12 patterns of the signal that were like worthy to make it through were our archangels now that we call like Michael or Gabriel or Gabriel or Uriel, like Raphael, like these, there's like 12 of them or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And they were the ones that were worthy that made it through. They were humans, like in the way that we are now in that place. And the rest of them were kind of discardable. You're like 12? That was it. You know what I mean? Like, holy shit. They're not, it's like, talk about like straight and narrow. I mean, that's interesting to think about. But now, that's it is interesting to think about. Like
Mm-hmm.
that gives a whole new concept on the idea of like an NPC. Something like a non-player character. Um, and you even I think like how much of my thinking in life and the fight that I'll have in my head with some comment that was made 10 years ago by somebody, like how much of that is discardable pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Most of it, I mean, it's like I don't know, a percent if I'm lucky is like valuable. You know what I mean? Like
I
being
know
honest.
exactly what you mean.
You know what I'm saying? So like that's the I love that idea of the Grail question. Because it's like the knights that were in search of the Holy Grail always saw that this thing in front of them was their dragon to slay or whatever. Like that was and it was their ego in response to the projection of somebody else being in the wrong in front of them. This is actually me being projected out that I'm now reacting to. Um, and so yeah, they were striving to do that for humanity and then continually ask themselves like, who am I, where did I come from, and what is my mission that I'm doing here. And I love this how Gilbert talks about this. He's like, second you walk through that gate of death, you're going to remember everything that you like knew beforehand. Like you come into the temporal realm and you forget, you drink the water of forgetfulness, whatever, as you come through the ladder, the descending soul side, and you wake up and you're like, oh, fiction and cartoons and jobs and all the fictions that take place. And then the second that you leave, you're like, oh, I was here to do that one thing, and I fucking missed it. And then you got to wait for another round to go back over to then step back in and try to do that thing. And that constant repetition of rising and falling, um, it's mirrored in everything, in seasons and sleep cycles and everything. Like we have a constant repetition of getting up to lay down to getting back up again. Um, and so we just know how to stand upright till we're the upright ones, I guess. I like that guy a lot. That he's really cool. I'd like to actually learn from that guy more. But yeah,
I think part of it too is how you handle situations. Like a very funny story, wasn't a good scenario by any means. I had just moved out here, right? And I'm one of the first people to, I got my plates changed over because I came from Arizona right away,
yeah,
like within the first few days. So right down the street from my apartment, the first weekend, I get pulled over by the sheriffs because
okay,
I come out of the gas station and the gas station was closed. This was like past 9 p.m. and a lot of stuff shuts down in Wilmington, after X,
right.
amount. So
Be the town.
he pulls me over because I don't know why. I think I had my lights off for a second or something
Okay,
and shakes me down, has me do the walk. And I'm somebody, I don't need alcohol. I don't, you know what I mean? And I'm the calmest
yeah.
person possible. And I'm as calm as can be. He has me do a breathalyzer. He asked me what college I went to, what I studied, like everything that's out of line, like none of your business. I'm like,
Right.
I just moved here,
Yeah,
from, and everything had checked out. He had me, and I've never done a walk before and I passed the breathalyzer, of course, but then he had me do a walk and all this nonsense and was just being a tough sheriff guy, And then he finally, what he did was he called his supervisor to come down. So I'm there for like 15 minutes because, I didn't know how to do the walk or what, I didn't know what he was talking about. I'm just
right
some
foot, left foot, right foot, left foot.
yeah, I know. And then the second time around, I finally caught on to what he was saying and just left, and I was calm and polite as can be. Thank you for doing your job, even though I could have said, could have been a prick. And then I asked him at the end, I said, well, thank you for your time. What was your name? And he's like, Triple Dog Six. Like doesn't even give his real name. But
Triple
see,
dog. Did
I
you
could
ever
have
run
let
in with the
that.
bounty hunter?
Yeah, right. But the bottom line is, I could have
Triple
let that
dog.
affect me. I could have said, screw Wilmington, screw this. And I just like shrugged it off,
Right.
never had any other run in, never had anything. And I'm just like, it goes down to not letting things get to you, if you know what I mean.
I do. I mean, that was I had a similar experience when we were driving back. So the bus is in. We leave the bus in Colorado, and we go get a rental car, and we just like drive through the night back to
Mhm.
Georgia. And we're like, we've been out now for too long. Let's just get home. And so we rent this minivan, and we like stuff a mattress in the back seat. We put everything in it because we thought we were abandoning the bus at one point.
Mhm.
Um, and or whatever, there's stuff going on with us. We'll just get everything back, and but I've been sleeping in the car. I'm a little like, I'd slept through a couple hours in the night. I get up, so I'm driving by 7 in the morning, 8 in the morning. And Chris has been driving through the night as well, and so I get behind the wheel and I just was like hit 90, and we're going 40. We're in Oklahoma, and I see the HP on the side of the road, and I was like, but I'm in traffic, I'm going with other people, and so lights hit, it's behind me. I'm like, I'm with all these people, you know what I mean? So we get pulled over. This dude walks up the window, goes, "Hey buddy, how fast are you going? You're going 76." And I was like, I know I was going 90. And he goes, "I just want to give you a warning, man. Just step out of the car real quick." And I was like, and I know everything is like all of the like, don't do this. And I was like, but warning, let's get out of the car. Let's go sit in the back of the
Sure.
deal. And so then, I get in this car, and like there's like clips or magazines in the door on both sides of the door. There's two M4s in the car. There's a backpack. The guy's wearing military gear. He's got a bulletproof vest on. Officer Blake, and so he starts talking. He was like, "Hey, would you have the cruise control at?" And I'm like, "Oh, this is buddy time, okay." And I'm starting to feel a little bit of the like tension build up. You're getting a little nervous about it,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Man, I don't know," and then he said something, and then I just started asking him a bunch of questions. but it was like casual shit. Like he was like a cattle farmer or something. So we started talking about that. And then he was like, he kind of quickly tried to pull it back. And so we went through this kind of, okay, all right. So he hands me the thing and he goes, you got to let you know, you got to go let my boss know that I'm doing my job. And, I don't really think that this is an appropriate job to have. I don't think this is a necessary part of our world in a lot of ways.
No, not at
Traffic
all.
citations, I think a lot of the municipal code stuff is it can be quite oppressive. So I don't really have like a great opinion of that whole deal. I do understand that there are like real crazy Sodom and Gomorrah type shit that could go down without a government. Like I get that.
Mm-hmm.
But so I guess it's one of the I look at it like a necessary evil. I don't look at it like like it's I don't back the blue or anything.
No,
And
anything
and so
strong.
as I'm getting ready to get out of the car, I'm like, cool, got this stupid warning for whatever reason. And he goes, you mind if I search the vehicle, see if you have any other people in there? And I was like, okay, here's the narcotic shakedown now. So now
Sure.
I go, well, man, do you mind if I exercise my right to refuse your like it's a constitutional right, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I am constitutionally allowed to refuse your request to look through my shit. So
Sure.
I saw a TikTok video where the guy said that, and I was like, well, fired out some rhetoric line that I'd heard from somebody say. And he was just like, he's refusing a search. And all of a sudden, this other car comes driving across the highway,
Ah,
like from the
yeah.
other side, and I was like, Jesus, this dude shows up and he goes, you like, he had evil in his eyes. Where
Mm-hmm.
Joshua Blake, this retard had his fucking name on his, like, his wife called him while I was in the car. And I was like, it's like Joshua Blake's wife. And I was like, this is ridiculous. He's got like Monster energy drinks in the back and like heavy
Sure.
metal playing it, like, and it's like 7:30 in the morning. And I was like, this dude's crazy. Like this is some weird gang thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like Officer Farva, miniature, like he had the mustache. It was
Mm-hmm.
such a weird character deal. And so then the evil dude shows up, and this guy had evil in his eyes. You know what I mean? Like it's something crazy in his eyes. And he was like, "You got any guns in the car?" And I was like, "You got the guns, buddy. You know what I mean? Like, what are you doing? Like you guys is a small army here."
Mm-hmm.
And I'm starting to get the agitation going. And so then I was starting to like, I'm gonna freak out. Like I'm not handling this very well. And so then he was like, we're gonna walk around and blah 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 with the dogs. And my wife is like now been starting to watch this, and she's like, oh, he's starting to get upset. And so like she just goes like ultra cool mode. And so the guy with the dog and Blake get out and start walking around the car, and they were like, they ask her to roll the windows down, and they get this puppy out. This
Mm-hmm.
German Shepherd is a puppy. It's 8 months old max. I mean, this dog is like that's like bouncing all over the place. And so the dog spots something in the car, and like, we got this car at 8 p.m. the night before. I don't know what's in this car. I don't know what's ever been done to this car. This is a rental car. So then now they're telling her she needs to get out. And she gets out and she goes, look, she goes, I want you to know that I am complying to this, but I am doing this against my will and volition. This is a forceful act. And they start acting like they can't hear her all of a sudden, especially the one with the darkness in his eyes. And she guns him, not threatening,
Mm-hmm.
directly. And he goes, I will take you to jail right now. And like we have a 2-year-old in the car, like, and so they proceed to go through like the dumbest, like, well, what's a mattress, what's it, like they were like looking at the cup holder like they'd never seen it before. They were so bummed that we didn't have anything in the car. They were like, sure. And I thought afterwards, let's go get Colorado plates. And like I guess they thought that we were like driving drugs wherever back across into the east. um and like, so they put the dog in the car with my wife, and the dog's in its cage, and it like looks like, Ed from the Lion King. Like it's all like cross-eyed and its tongue hanging out. And Ara's sitting there, my daughter's sitting there, and she's just like loving it, like she's having the best time. So like I don't know, man. Like it was so strange because I went home and then just watched like the auditor cop videos where people are
I
like
know
auditing.
exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, I used
I
to
just would
watch
watch that
James
for like five
Freeman.
hours because I was
Mhm.
steaming forever, and I was like, I'm gonna write the governor of Oklahoma. I had all these plans, like didn't do any of it. Um, I don't know. It was one of these things that like really sucked me back into the carnival for a while because you're like the injustice of it all, and I'm like, and then I'm like, I don't even think these Bill of Rights apply to me. Like I don't
No, I just, yeah,
because I have a birth certificate, I don't own my body. I have equity in my body with the United States government, and I identify with that birth certificate because the issuer of the document owns the document. And so I've created an equitable position where two parties own me. I don't own myself, and that's the birth certificate. So you're like, oh, cool. I don't even think that applies to me because you have to be a landowner, you have to be a property owner, and you can't own anything if you don't own yourself. If you have equity in yourself, you don't own it. You have a shared custody of it. So I'm like, this whole fiction of freedom, and I mean, it's like it was a ruse. It's a charade. Like it's a fiction.
exactly.
It's a paper charade. But it's this whole. That's why like politics to me like it's like a willful trick, like
Hmm.
like that's why I brought up that Isaiah thing, because like if you're putting that figure up there, then you've said, I am an infant, I need a guardian, I need to be
Hmm.
held accountable, hold me accountable for a fee. And that is the whole voting world that we live in.
Exactly.
And in with the whole concept of revelation of method, meaning like it's the Talmudic law, right? Like it's not my fault. I told you the deal. You signed on the dotted line. It's Ursula taking fucking Ariel's voice. If she doesn't kiss the guy at whatever by whatever o'clock, right? Like it's that deal that you make and you sacrifice, autonomy for security. Again, I don't know what like we do without any of this stuff. Like I just know it's there. So like you have to start somewhere, right? Um, it steamed me up for a while, but then you kind of get over it, and then I end up looking the dude up on Facebook, and like this guy's getting awards for being like top drug hunting dog,
Wow.
for his squad, and I went through the comments because there was one person out of like 500 comments that were like, yeah, that guy sucks, and the rest of them were like, you're fighting for the community, and you're like,
Sure.
man, you're like, well, how fucked up is that community? You know what I mean? Like maybe
Hmm.
this is a crazy, like, meth haven. I don't know. Um, I think you obviously guessed wrong on our situation, but like, I don't know what the overall deal is like. Like, he probably thinks he's doing right. I don't know if he knows he's working for a bank, like, I don't know if he's like hip to the concept that he's like, he's not protecting the community. Like, I don't know if he's like hip to that. But that's all still a point of view, really. Um, so yeah, I mean, like went through that. It was quite agitating, and this was all on the ride home from like the bus trip and the bad investment. There was a lot of like that was
Sure.
a trying time. So I slept a lot this winter. like,
Hmm.
like after this whole year, I was like, I'm gonna sleep. I just like I needed to like catch up on it, like get my energy rebuilt. But I learned a lot through that because it is like I think it's weird, this whole concept of like fictions and living in fictions, and the idea that like Oklahoma is a fiction and the United States is a fiction. It's cellophaned over a plot of land that there's been demarcated out with like lines and concepts for a good reason. Because I do think that I think some of the worst parts of our nature would take over in a way that would be like, just kind of gross. If it didn't have something in charge, whether or not that shit sucks, I mean, it's still available. It's like, yeah, conventional farming sucks, but there's at least something to eat. Um, doesn't matter that all the other stuff is coming with it, like it's still there. Okay, now that we know that, now how do we like take responsibility and actually be the one in charge of organizing that shit around you, because it has to do with sphere of influence and organization, like how organized you are. um those cops are just more organized than I am because they got a bunch of guns and then state behind them, so at the time they had the power. So you have to be okay with that. doesn't mean you like it, but like you have to at least understand that's how the game's
No,
played.
and I mean they were going hard with me. They were asking me like, what prescription drugs are you on? What do you and I'm somebody who I when I grew up, I ate trash. So I had Crohn's disease until I was
Oh,
like
okay.
started eating healthy at like age
Yeah,
29, and
yeah,
reversed it. So I don't touch, my dad was a pharmacist. I don't touch
yeah.
pharmaceuticals. So
Right,
for
right,
them to
right.
say you must be on, it was like guilt right away in my mind. I didn't snap. I was calm as could be, and they didn't do anything. They didn't even give me a warning or anything. As soon as his supervisor came, he said, "No, there's nothing wrong with this guy. This guy's fine." Because I was
Yeah, yeah.
being as honest as can be. I was telling the truth, and so I just let it go and moved on. But right away, I thought right there, I'm like guilty until proven innocent. You know, with
Sure.
him,
Yeah. I mean, but it's a shakedown. You know what I mean? Like it is a
it
shakedown.
was, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that is what it is, because
And
like
it was
this,
funny too, you also being in acting would get this. When I first moved here, I watched a lot of movies that were filmed here because there was so much filmed here. So I'm watching this 1980s, late 1980s TV movie starring Ricky Schroeder about a corrupt sheriff's office. And it's
oh yeah.
filmed in Wilmington
You're
and
like, I
right
know that
right in
guy.
the yeah, and he's the good guy, and the rest of them are all corrupt, and
Right.
he turned, but it was just so ironic. But outside of that, I didn't dawn upon it. I didn't think about it anymore. I just said, this is a great place to live. I'm not gonna let them get to me. I'm not gonna let them steal my energy or anything. And I think
And
that's what you got to do.
that was what I went through the like 5 hours of the auditing videos afterwards because I was like, I'm gonna get these.
I know. I've seen the auditing
And then
videos
you
too.
watch them, and then you're like, these guys are angry, pissed off, and then they go into these altercations to
Hmm.
try to provoke something out of them, out
Yes.
of the cops. And then you're like, well, that's not a really, I don't want to live that life. I mean, like you guys want to do that. That's cool. I don't really want to do that because like there'll be guys who are like, I'm gonna go drive around this Taco Bell awkwardly at 3 in the morning and try to get a cop to come after me. You're like
Sure.
that's like the life that these guys are there's the way they want to spend time.
Or
And so
going to a government building and film just because, yeah, just to piss, yeah.
just to try to provoke a response so that then they can like,
Mhm.
start exercising some stuff that they've like learned. And I'm like, I'm sure it needs to be done, I guess. I don't know. I understand that it's like, but like you gotta have organization for like what happens afterwards. Like you gotta have to kind of think that one through. You're like, I don't really know what we're gonna do next. So I've seen a lot of these dudes. They're talking about the flowers are blooming in Antarctica. Have you seen this hashtag coming up? And they're like, oh, we're learning how to speak French. They're saying it's like they're making odes to like French Revolution stuff.
Oh, okay.
One brother was on there, man, he was just holding the axe, like video after video. And I was like, bro, you're gonna get a knock. Like you were gonna get knocked on your door. You're like, the
Oh,
FBI is coming to your house.
yeah.
So like you gotta play that game, you gotta go all the way. And you can't do it by it's not a by yourself thing.
Mhm.
And I'm not encouraging that. I'm not, that was
No.
that was not like do it, but I get it. Like people are agitated with some of the stuff. I don't know. I don't know. I think that you kind of got to see a little bit of the bigger picture and you just minimal engagement, I guess, like removing consent, that sort of thing. And I think that's starting with, because I mean, I haven't voted since I voted the very first election I could vote in. And it was because I
Mhm.
didn't know any better. And then I didn't vote the next three elections because I was in LA and I was like, it doesn't really matter. Like this is
No,
going
not in
away.
LA.
Yeah, you're like, I was like at the dog park and I was watching all these people stand in line and I was like, I'm gonna hang out with the dog. And I didn't really pay attention to it, and it didn't quite feel right, but I wasn't like clued into it. And then, Trump really sucked everybody in.
Were
And
you
that
there? Were you there in 2016? Because
I
I was
wasn't
there
there.
from what, 2007 to 2018 or 2017.
Mhm.
And no, it was 2018. It was. And they shut down like 2016, was it? They shut down the streets for like 2 weeks.
Oh wow. Yeah, I don't remember that part.
Yeah,
Maybe
I mean,
they did. I
well,
didn't leave
like
that.
protesters.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
you know what I
yeah.
mean.
I didn't leave
Yeah.
that much though at
Like they
that
went
point.
on my small street, and I'm like, And the only reason I
Then
found
I'm
out
trying to
is
go to
because
Trader Joe's.
I was watching the news or whatever, and I'm like, I remember going out and saying, "Hey, get a job, get a job."
Well, but like that whole like whoa big entrance, the
Hmm.
big view at it was what it was like. Oh, it's a carnival. It's a carnival. He was the ultimate
Exactly.
comedy attraction. You know what I mean? Like he was a main event for a failing carnival, and it really reinvigorated interest in it for a long time. And then like the Roe v. Wade thing. Like
Hmm.
that came up with last year, and I've learned so much about what that has meant in legalese terms
Hmm.
actually being talked about, and the way that it's talked about as a soundbite is not what it was about.
Hmm.
It wasn't about that at all, because on the NIH website, a baby that is not delivered as the fetus and its organs, its fetal-maternal organs, the afterbirth, intact, is considered an abortion. That means, in layman's term, if you cut the cord, it's an abortion. So I'm an aborted baby by that definition, by legal definition. They're not talking about right to choose. I'm not saying that's not happening. I'm not saying there's not states that aren't making people drive to other states. I'm not saying that. This is about what this is about something bigger than that. This is about a legalese, like I show you, I don't show you. It's a carnival game where I'm switching, I'm pulling sleight of hand, because this is what this birth certificate kind of goes back to. When you start identifying as your birthday and your birth certificate and your given name, now you are going, I'm an infant. I need to be ruled. And something is getting messed up with that and having to get reshuffled around from what it seems like. It seems like the world running on this emergency, whatever it is, emergency acts or whatever COVID did, this like
Hmm.
COVID narrative. It's been running off some sort of like, it's not business as usual. It's under like a different hat.
No.
So they're trying to restructure our whole economic system, because the birth certificate is exchanged with the Federal Reserve as a bond. The
Hmm.
Federal Reserve releases cash for the birth certificates that are given to it. There's no other way this works. The idea that money is made out of thin air, nothing from nothing makes nothing. You cannot do that. That's not. There's no business that runs off of that. There's no corporation that runs off of air. It's not. It runs off of something, and the backing in that is the 600 to $1 million revenue that is kind of guaranteed for a middle class child.
Hmm.
That's what the revenue that birth certificate. I will issue a social security number, which is based off of the document. That document is based off of a live birth record. So there's this series of documents that you allegedly, which is like in this mirror dimension on paper, that all of the global surety is backed by. You were the underwriter of the script. The way the loan goes out is on that document. So that's being disrupted somehow. These law guys are figuring this stuff out, and they're like calling stuff. And so like it's so weird that this, because whatever COVID was, it wasn't the narrative that was like the mainstream one. Like it's
Hmm.
just like, like that's just sort of how I look at everything like that. I'm like, we either are like, as a species have like traveled to the other side of the universe, or like we've never been to the moon. Like it's one or the other, but it's not the
Hmm.
moon. Like it's
I
not just
know.
what I'm saying. That's kind of my like barometer on all this stuff. I don't want to like hard stance on any of this thing, but I don't think it was the way that it was described. I think it was something that was happening within the way our global identity and the sureties was back. It does. That's the only thing that makes sense to me. I know it's a little nebulous, but
Hmm.
anyway, I'm here rambling off on that. But like this whole Roe v. Wade thing fits into that. Like we're all aborted babies, like by that definition. I think
Hmm.
that's such a weird thing to think about, like because we have this one concept of looking at this deal, and that term means something very different in legalese, which is what the political people are using, knowing you don't understand what you're saying and knowing that it's an emotional trigger that you're actually saying. They're doing two things at the same time. It's like really interesting. Um, so I don't know. I got a little. I don't know if that was weird or not, but
No,
um,
that was great.
aggressive
Yeah.
about it. Yeah, I got
Uh-huh.
aggressive about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we've been going for a while. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. And in
Ended up.
closing,
I like
I just
it.
want to encourage people, if you can grow your own food, go out there and grow your own food, be self-sufficient. I know someone out here who did, Eva, she does a great job, of, gardening, growing her own food. It's incredible. Very impressive.
Yeah. I love it. I'm supporting that. And there's a lot of different strategies. I know you have Matt coming back on from the Cultivate Elevate. He's the one that's really popularizing, one of the guys that's popularizing the electroculture stuff. And yeah, I mean, getting good compost, just
Yeah,
getting your hands
exactly.
back in the dirt. Yeah, learning all the different strategies for growing food. And you it's a huge benefit because it just tastes better.
Hmm.
Just better. So yeah,
Exactly.
more
And
the better.
I'll
More the
post
better.
your social media link below. I'll post links below to what we were talking about.
Yeah,
This was
awesome.
such a great time. I'll have to have you back on
Yeah,
again.
man. Yeah, definitely.